Glitch Productions just released their teaser for the long-awaited episode 5 of the amazing digital circus. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the teaser along with giving my thoughts on what the next episode in Digital Circus is going to be about and what could happen within this episode. We start off the teaser with just looking at a blank wall, with Kane telling us that he booked a ticket or something to Copper 9 and won't be a part of this teaser, and also forgot to make one, so it seems that Bubble is kind of guiding this whole thing, at least within the whole lore of whatever these teasers or however they're made or something. The next scene is seemingly of Kinger in some sort of baseball stadium, although it is kind of hard to tell since everything is basically one frame and everything's very blurry, as if this teaser was very poorly put together. The next scene, or more accurately described as the next frame, is a very blurry image of Jax seemingly in his safari outfit, which matches the teasers that we've gotten in the past. We see next a freeze frame of one of the Gaslight District characters. I think this is mostly just a gag to throw random stuff into the teaser. I highly doubt that these shows are connected whatsoever. We got another frame of seemingly the Mafia sitting with Pomni and Jackson in. I have no idea what's going on. Again, it's very hard to tell what exactly we are looking at since everything's very blurry and, again, feeling like it's very poorly put together. I have no idea how to describe this next frame. I think it's just like an elbow. I honestly don't even know at this point. The next frame is a very poor render of Kane. This has to be some reference to something, although I have no idea what exactly. This next frame is of Ragatha in the Mafia-like setting, holding something like scissors, I think. Next, we finally get actual footage of the episode, not just freeze frames. We get to see Kane talking very intensely to the camera, almost as if having a mental breakdown. The next scene is, again, actual footage from the episode and not just still images. We get to see Jax and Pomni being pulled up into something at the top of the actual digital circus. I assume this is probably just them getting pulled into one of many adventures they're going to be going to in this episode inevitably, but that's just me. Again, we get to see Kane doing something with the main cast members, probably just a visual show as he's explaining like one of the adventures or something. We see Jax being overly upset about something. The next scene is of Pomni and Ragatha, with Pomni looking a little bit curious while Ragatha looks very frustrated, or at least annoyed. The next scene is of Kane trying to probably convince Zubul to go on the adventures that they're probably going to go on this episode, or perhaps just talking to them about something else. The background is basically just a white void. Whether this is actually the void, the one we saw in episode 1, probably isn't, since the background doesn't exactly match, but it is something to think about, since we haven't really seen the void basically at all since the pilot. The next scene is again of Pomni and Ragatha. Perhaps they'll be sticking together in this episode, since I think this is also Ragatha's episode. If you are unaware, a while ago, Gooseworks released a list with the episodes and also the characters that will be focused on mainly within these episodes. And if I remember correctly, since I can't find the image of the tweet or post on Tumblr, forgot where it was, episode 5 was supposed to be Ragatha's episode, so seeing them together a lot probably makes sense. Anyway, this scene shows them trying to defuse or at least cut wires. This probably is them defusing like an explosive, so perhaps the Mafia setting might be a bit more serious than we thought it would be. The next scene is of Jax and Pomni in the Mafia setting, as we can see with a very like monotone like filter that's been placed on it. We can see Jax looking concerned or at least surprised or even maybe frightened at something off screen. Perhaps this hints to more of his character development probably in the next episode, since again from that post from Gooseworks, I'm pretty sure episode 6 is the Jax episode, so perhaps they're doing a little bit of building up to his episode in this episode. The next scene is nothing too special or anything really deep to unpack. It's just Ragatha in some sort of setting that's very dark, perhaps just outside at night, panicking and trying to perhaps maybe fix something or comfort someone, or I don't know. Again, nothing really too large to unpack from the scene. The next scene consists of the entire cast, including Zubul, so perhaps Kane was able to convince them to go on the adventure or adventures. They are in the baseball stadium, and as the screen pans by, you can see basically duplicates of themselves. Perhaps these are like evil versions for them to play against in a baseball game. The next scene consists of Jax spinning around in a circle with Pomni off to the side watching. I don't really think this is anything serious, although this is the same setting, perhaps the Sephara setting, where the Ragatha scene was before, so these scenes are obviously connected. We have Kane slowly being sucked downward into an abyss of darkness. The next shot is of Pomni and Jax in the Oval Office, or like that famous office you see in the White House in the United States. Jax is looking off to the side, perhaps even at the camera, sort of. Probably this is where he breaks the fourth wall. The next scene is Pomni on the... Honestly, it's just exactly exactly what it looks like. It's just Pomni in the digital circus with like something on her head. The next scene is King are probably freaking out at the baseball stadium. Perhaps they're starting to lose the game or something. The scene after that is probably the same scene we saw before, just from a different angle. The next scene is of Kane being surrounded by floating eyeballs with a spotlight on him. Honestly, I have no idea what's going on anymore. Perhaps we get to see more like glitches within Kane's AI or something, and this is just a result of that. We get some quick shots of some of the cast members in different areas, being Ragatha, Zubul, and Jax. The next scene is of Kane flinging something off into the distance. Perhaps it was someone, maybe one of the cast members, but it could also just be an inanimate object, just like a physical gag that he does. The next scene is of Jax opening a door, pushing Zubul up against a wall. The next scene is again in this very nighttime-like setting, perhaps also still in the safari. Jax being the center focus of the camera with Ragatha in the background looking kind of ashamed. Jax's expression kind of goes annoyed or at least angry, and then the scene switches. Perhaps this is at the end of the episode when Ragatha probably speaks out about her actual feelings towards Jax, about him kind of being a jackass. The next scene is of Pomni again in the Oval Office, being surrounded by other cast members. Although this wasn't exactly teased in the community posts we've gotten in the past, perhaps this was just the office setting, and we all just mistook it as like white-collar jobs. The next scene is of Jax again in the Mafia setting being handed poker chips. Perhaps we get to see his gambling addiction start to rise, although probably not. The next scene is of Kane looking down at a notepad, looking very confused. Perhaps this is why there are so many adventures, that he's just trying out new ideas, and he's running out of new ideas to try, or maybe he's just putting the cast on more adventures and they just don't like any of them, so he keeps having to change them and he eventually runs out of ideas. The next couple of scenes are just Pomni and Jax hanging out, perhaps getting to know each other a little bit more, as we did get to see a little bit of their chemistry going on in episode 4, so perhaps that sticks a little bit in this episode. The next scene is of Ragatha holding a bat, again in the baseball stadium. We then get a scene of Kane and Bubble looking at a TV screen, perhaps watching the baseball game or just watching the cast in general going on their adventures, maybe studying about what they like most and what they dislike most, trying to create more ideas for adventures. We see Kinger and Gangle walking out of a portal. However, this clip is like half a second long. It's just like forwarded and then reversed like over and over again. I think this is mostly just part of the gag throughout the entire teaser being very poorly put together since Kane didn't make it or something. And then finally we just get a few cuts of different scenes of different characters looking at the camera. Whether it be the actual camera they are looking at or just something off in a distance, I don't know. Given all of this information with the scenes and different freeze frames from the beginning of the teaser, I think I can make out a general synopsis of the entire episode. I think generally Kane's going to send them on one adventure, they're going to complain too much, and he just keeps sending them on different ones, trying to figure out what goes right and what goes wrong, and what they like the most and what they least like. I think throughout this episode we get to see more of an insight on Ragatha as a person, and at some point Kane starts to go insane or something, as we can see in a few scenes, like the one where he's like levitating in a dark abyss with like eyes floating around him. But that is just me. If you want to stay tuned for my review I'm going to make when this episode inevitably comes out, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications and like the video to help me out with the algorithm. I'll see you guys next week when the episode releases.